For coming, guys. Thank you for coming. Yeah, okay. So I guess we want to introduce ourselves now. So I'm Jillian. I am one of the co-head of the programming department on the FeMaidens, or the Iron Maidens. I'm a rising senior, so I've been on the team for 3 years. I joined in my sophomore year.
My name is Catherine. I am also a rising senior, and I've been on the team for going to be 3 years next year. And I am a member of the Iron Maidens programming department.
Okay, cool. So just to kind of like practice what this is. So these are kind of lessons for more for like Iron Maiden's perspectives, but if you're a cyborg, you're free to join too, because there might be some like material that also is part of the cyborgs tryouts, but I can't really say anything on that, so I'm not entirely sure. But we're just gonna go more in depth at tryouts because tryouts normally only like 3 or 4 weeks long. I mean, 4 like sessions long, so the material moves pretty quickly, right? But during these lessons, we're gonna try to go like a little slower, and just kind of field any questions that you may have, just so that like when you try out, maybe you get a head start. Yeah. So these lessons are also recorded. So if you like do miss a lesson like further down the line, you can just watch the recording. It's pretty important, I guess, just know everything so that you're kind of like caught up at each lesson. Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, now is kind of your chance. You can like, if you have any questions, you can like message in the chat. I think we're also gonna have like some anonymous like question form or whatever. So you would be able to just like anonymously ask questions if you don't want to like put your name to it. Yeah, so this is basically for you guys just to ask any questions you may have, and we're just going to go through like the material a little slower and more in depth. So just to kind of preface a little bit, the slides are missing some stuff that's going to be taught in AP Comp Sci. So if you guys are taking Comp Sci next year or already have taken it, there's not everything on there. It's just the stuff that's more used in robotics, or at least for us. So we do use Java to code the robot. So knowing Java will definitely help you like code the robot better and understand the code better. Yeah, so that's why we're starting out with Java, and then we're going to move more into like robot oriented stuff in the coming few weeks. Yeah, so just take attendance if you haven't, and then open up your Replit. And you may want to take notes. I'm not sure like how much you want to do, but we also have slides. So I'm going to send like the slide deck here. It doesn't have like the answers to the questions we're going to ask, but you can like refer to that if you want. Yeah, I think we're good to go. Oh, you might want to code along too, just to help you guys like learn how to do it. Okay, cool.
Okay, so wait, that's all the announcements, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so before I share my screen and start presenting, I just want to get a look at how much experience everyone has. So there's a poll in the chat. Just put 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 for like no experience at all, and 4 for like expert or like you took AP Comp Sci or something like that. So yeah, just to gauge the experience, the audience. So yeah, it's anonymous. So if you guys are worried about that, yeah. I'll wait a minute. So just fill that out.
Oh, and Milena, to answer your question, we're doing Java. Not sure if that was directed towards that.
Yeah, and just if you guys don't know, Java is a programming language that we use for robotics. Okay, it looks like we have everyone. Yeah, so it looks like a lot of people don't have too much knowledge, so I will try to cater to that. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Cool. So welcome to the basics of Java. So this is going to be our first lesson. So we're going to learn variables and conditionals. That's just an overview. So we might not get to everything, but just to let you guys know. Okay, so the first thing is the print statement. So a print statement is used to print or display text on a console. So the first usual piece of code that new people run is the hello world. So you guys can open up your replit, and all you have to do is type system.out.println with parentheses, quotation marks, and put hello world. And you can just run it, and what should happen is that you print or that you see the words hello world in the black thing called the console. And basically that's called the print statement, and it just prints something onto this black thing called the console. Few important things to notice is just the semicolon and how to print. So system.out.println, all of those, you can't misspell, so spelling is very important. And yeah, that's how you print. Okay, so the next thing. So you can just print more things. You can print words with quotation marks, and you can print numbers. And just to note, this ln part after the word print just means the next line. So you can see it prints these two things on different lines. And whatever is in the parentheses is going to print out. So you can try these on your own as well. But I'm just going to move on. Actually, we can get some more interaction. So if you guys could just say how you would print the number 231 and just put in the chat. So if you were to print the number 231, how would you do that? So just put that in the chat. Nice, yeah. So just be careful with spelling, right? So yeah, there's typos, but yeah, in Java, just be aware of the spelling. So make sure you spell system right. But yes, that is correct. Yep, that's good. Yep, no problem. We all make these mistakes. That's good. So what if we want to print everything on the same line, right? So that ln part makes everything go on the next line. So to make stuff go on the same line, you just take out that ln part. So that's pretty simple. I'll just go through that pretty quickly. Comments. Melina. Comments. So comments are things used by humans. So it's putting it's comments in Google Docs kind of. You're just putting it so that when someone reads your document or something, they can see the comments on the side. And what comments are usually in coding is to explain pieces of code, so that other humans that are reading it and also working with you with the coding can understand your code easier. So to write comments, this is going to be a single line comment. So pretend we want to describe that line of code I have up there. So we would put 2 slashes and we would just say print hello world. So that's kind of describing this line of code. If you have a longer comment that you want on different lines, you would do a slash and a asterisk, and you could just do the same thing. Print on a different line or something, hello world. I don't know. And then to close it off, you would need an asterisk and then a slash. So that's how comments work. They don't affect your code at all. So they're just for humans, and Java kind of just ignores everything inside of your comment. Okay. So any questions, just make sure to put it in the chat. Okay, so the next thing is variables. So variable definition and type. So what is a variable, right? So a variable stores a value. So it's kind of like variable in math. And every variable stores a different type of value. So like in math, we usually only have like decimals or integers or whole numbers or things like that. But in Java, there are other different types of variables that we call data types. So integers is one of them, and we denote that with the shortcut int. And that just is like whole numbers and negative numbers, basically, just your regular definition of an integer. They're doubles, so that's just numbers with a decimal point. So any number with a decimal point, even if it's like it would be an integer like 1.0, that's still a double. Then there's booleans, which are just true or false values. There are characters, which is a single character and it just uses one quotation mark. And strings, which is what we saw before, like hello world is actually called a string. And we denote that with two quotation marks. And it's just a series of characters. So a character is only one character, but strings have multiple characters. Okay, so how you make a variable. So the reason why I went through types is because when you're making a variable, you need the data type, and that's really important. And the data type has to correspond to the value you put in. So like if you wrote like, I don't know, Boolean something equals like 2, that will give you like some type of like weird error because Java knows that you're trying to make a Boolean, which is true or false, but you're trying to make it like an integer variable, so that doesn't work. So to make a variable, you need the type, you need the name of the variable, can name it anything, mostly anything, the equal sign, and then the value of that variable, and the always important semicolon. So here are some examples, and you can see that there's always semicolons. So let's try to make a variable. So go into your replit and try to make a variable. It could be any variable. Most simply, it could be your name or your birthday or just like your favorite number or something. So I can make one too. So mine is just going to be my name. And I'm making that equal to Catherine and semicolon. Yeah. So just give a few seconds for you guys to test it out, play around with different variables. You can change up the names or the values. Okay, I'll just move on. Hopefully you guys made your variables. And again, any questions in the chat? Okay, so concatenation. So basically this is just a big word for saying like you're combining things with a plus sign. So with a plus sign, you can combine two strings. So like here you have one string and another string, and you could just like add strings together and it just like clumps them together. Or you can add a string and any other data type, like integers, booleans, doubles into one larger string. And you can use as many plus signs as you want. So here there's like 2, there's like 3, or 1. So these are just examples of combining strings into like one larger string. So even though we know like 9 is not a string, because Java sees strings that you're adding to like an integer or something, it's just gonna make this like a string and it's just gonna combine it into one bigger string. So you guys could try this as well. So you could do the example on the slide. So first name, and you can make a variable for your last name and print out, whoops, and you can print out your first and last name together. So we can use the print statement that we learned before and print out, so first name plus a space and then your last name. So you could just follow along with this and test it out on your own. So should print Catherine Lee. Nice. So it just combines the string together with the plus sign. So this is really important, especially when we have variables. So yeah, it's just a very important concept. Okay. So the next thing is doing arithmetic in Java, arithmetic, I meant in Java. So Java has addition, subtraction, and multiplication, like you would do in like a calculator. So you could just do like 2 times 5 or something like that, and it would work like a calculator would, or 2 plus 5, any of those. So that's pretty intuitive, but there are some different nuances in Java that are different from like math class. So the first thing is they have a thing called integer division. So if you divide two integers, which are like numbers without decimal points, what it will give you is another integer value. So it won't give you like 1.6, which is what 8 divided by 5 is supposed to be, because these are all integers. So it kind of just like cuts the decimal point out. It won't round because 1.6 would round to 2, but it just like cuts out everything past the decimal point. There's another thing called decimal division, which is when one or more of the things that you're dividing is a double or has a decimal point, then it will return that decimal value. So just be aware of that, to just be careful when you're dividing things. It might not give you like what you expected it would give you. Another thing is modulus. So this is kind of what we have in math, and it uses the percent sign. So basically 8 modulus 5 would give you the remainder when you divide 8 by 5, which is 3. And then exponentiation, so we don't have like that base and then like the caret and stuff like that in Java, but what we do have is a method that we'll go over later, and you just do this by like writing math.pow and with parentheses, and the first number will be the base and the second number will be the exponent. So this is the same as saying 3 to the second power, which is 9. Again, you could just like try these on your own on your Replit and see how they work. But I would just say integer division is something like super that trips you up really like often, and modulus is something really important that you have to use. Okay, so just some conceptual practice, some questions that you guys can answer in the chat. So someone or everyone just type into the chat the different types of variables that we learned today. So hint, there are 5. Yes, string is the first one. Nice, you guys got it. So that's, well, we did not go over floats. That is something in Python. Well, they kind of have it in Java, but we did not really talk about it. You're missing 1, and as a hint, it's a true or false spell. Yes, Booleans, exactly. Okay, that is correct. That's supposed to be what's underneath this thing. What is a formula for making a variable? So we kind of went over this. So the formula for making a variable, or you guys could make a variable in the chat if you guys want. Yes, and for anyone who just came in, please fill out the attendance. Oh, wait, since no one is answering the second one, yes. But Oren, you are forgetting one thing, really important, which is the semicolon, right? So yes, so it's really important. And you'll like get errors in your code and you have like no idea why, and it's just going to be that one semicolon. So just remember that. What would be the data type to store the value false? I kind of hinted to this. Yes, Boolean, exactly. And what is a statement for printing? What is the statement for printing? So remember, yes. So I'm sorry if I said your name wrong. Tabib, hopefully that's right. Yes, that's also important, the capital S. So everything in Java is very important, no matter how trivial you think it is. But yes, that is the correct statement, and semicolon again. Just remember that. Cool, so I'll move on. Why is my slide not moving? Okay. So some practice. I'll skip this. Oh, this is nice. Sorry. Okay, let's just try to do this. Declare a string and a Boolean and use two print statements to print them on the same line. So I went through this really quickly. So if you don't know how to do it on the same line, I guess it's okay, but that would just be a challenge. I don't know if you guys want to put in the chat, but really do it on your Replit, and I'll try to give you like a minute to do it so you guys have time, and then I'll show you guys the answer and go over it. Okay, so maybe or maybe not, that was enough time. Hopefully. Actually, a better indicator would be if you guys are done, just put done in the chat, just to let me know so I don't cut anyone off. So if you guys are done with this question, just type done in the chat. I'd give people another minute. So if you have it in the chat, just like keep it, just don't send it yet. Just so other people can have a chance. I'll just give 30 more seconds. Yeah. I don't think there's a printf, at least not that I've heard of. Okay, so it's been 2 minutes. Just for time purposes, I could go over it with you guys. So yeah, if you have it, you can definitely just put in the chat right now, because I'm just gonna go over it. And sorry for anyone who is still working. Okay, so making a string, declaring a string, right? So this is just one example of how you could do it. Yeah, string subject equals quotation marks, math, semicolon. Yeah, that looks pretty good, but the only thing is in Java, Booleans are all lowercase, so there's no uppercase T. But everything else seems good, and Boolean in Java as well is also lowercase, so only string is uppercase. So those are just like small nuances just to be aware of. So to print them on the same line, Remember printing them on different lines, you would need the ln after print, but to print them on the same line, you just like take out the ln part. So it's just system.out.print without the ln. And you just print out the variables and in the parentheses and then semicolons again. We can go over the question before if we have time, but I think the next part is more important to go over. So again, any questions you guys have, just put it in the chat and we can answer them. So the next thing is conditionals, which are really, really important. I'm just going to stress the importance. So what are conditionals? So it's a statement that performs a certain action based on whether a condition evaluates the true or false. So an example, which is this diagram. So the condition is it raining? So if the answer is yes, then what you want to do is bring an umbrella. And if it's false, then you don't want to bring an umbrella. So you can see that based on whether this condition is true or false, you do different things. So that's basically what a conditional is in simple terms. So the question you would ask is, how do you make a condition, right? So the way we do it in Java and in many other languages actually as well, is we can compare two numbers or two like values, right? And these are the ways we would do it. So in math, you've probably seen the 4 on the left, on the right here, but these on the left might be a little bit unfamiliar. So the first one is two equal signs. And basically what that means is like comparing if two numbers are equal. And if it is equal, then it would be true. And if it's not, then it would be false. And this one is comparing if it's not equal, if they're not equal. So if like it's 3 not equal to 2, then that should be true because 3 is not equal to 2. So I'm going to give an example and you guys could put whether it's true or false in the chat. So here is the question. So is this true or false? Yes, that's good. I should be relieved that you guys know that 5 is not equal to 4, but yes, that is false. And what do you mean? Yes, it is not equal. Okay, and another huge point is, what is the difference between 1 equal sign and 2 equal signs? So a lot of people get these two things confused. So what do you guys think the difference is between 1 equal sign and 2 equal signs? Yes, Zara, that is good. And what is 2 equal signs? Yes, that's really good. So keep that difference in mind, because you might get confused and it might cause an error later in your code. So it's really important to know the difference. So 1 equal sign declares a value. It's used to making variables, but 2 equal signs compares the quality of two things. So that is correct. Okay, so what if we want to compare strings, right? So we don't actually use the 2 equal signs to compare the quality of strings. What we do is use the dot equal. So how we would use this, right? So I'll just pull up an example. The example is in the slides as well, but you guys should code along with this. So I have one string, right? So string 1, and I'll make it equal to Java. And I have another string, so string 2, and it's going to be equal to, I have no idea, Python. Just know that that's another coding language. Okay, so how would I compare these two? I can print this out. So to use the dot equals, there's going to be one string before the dot. So I'll put like string 1 and dot equals parentheses, and then I put the second string dot like string 2. So what this does is it compares string 1 with string 2, and it's asking the computer like, are these two things equal? And it should be false. I don't know why there's an error. see if this works. Maybe it's a, I don't know. Well, Java is being slow. There's not supposed to be an error there. But anyways, Java is being slow. So yeah. So that is how you compare two strings. So you have one string and then dot equals and then the second string. And that should compare the two strings. So instead of using the two equal signs like you would do with like numbers, just do this for strings. Okay, so evaluate this. So 10 minus 3 equals 7. So is this true or false? You guys can put in the chat. Trick question, guys. Is this true or false? Okay, so someone thinks it's true. Let's get more people. I'll wait until at least 3 people. Okay, so people think it's true, right? So what we can do is just put it into our code and see what happens. And the wait shall begin again. Yeah, so you guys are correct. So 10 minus 3 is 7, right? So 7 should equal 7. So that is true. Yeah, it evaluates to Boolean. If statements. Okay, so this is like the conditional part now. So this is the structure of a conditional. So 4 greater than 2 is the condition. So it should be a Boolean value, right? So 4 is greater than 2 is true. And math is fun will only print. So this part will only run if the condition is true. So since 4 is greater than 2 is true, then math is fun will appear in the console. So yeah, try to write your own conditional on Replit, on your own Replit. So just be aware of the structure of this. So the first thing is the if keyword, which tells like Java that this is going to be a conditional. And then you're going to have the conditional in the parentheses. So the parentheses are important. And then you're going to have brackets. And inside the brackets is the code that's going to run only if this condition is true. So you guys can run this on your own. I think typing it out might take a little bit of
I just want to pop in and say, like, if you're kind of confused, it's okay. You can just like ask your questions whenever, but I think at the end maybe we will have time to do like a Q&A. So like if you're like not really sure what's happening right now, it's totally okay. We are moving a lot faster than like most normal computer science classes, I would say, but slower than robotics. So yeah, it's kind of a weird balance. But if you're like confused or anything, you can like either like voice your questions now or you can wait until everyone leaves to ask and stuff like that.
Yeah, your silence is kind of guiding me to go faster. But yeah, if you guys have a question, you guys should definitely ask. And if you're not sure, if you have a question, just like say I'm confused. Like that's enough to just tell me to slow down.
And if you were confused like 20 minutes ago, that's also okay. Like you can still say that too.
Yeah, I can definitely still kind of review a little bit because we kind of do have some time. And don't worry because it is recorded. So if you really need to, you could definitely just rewatch the recording. Hopefully that was enough time for you guys to make your own conditional. I do encourage you guys to do that because hands-on experimentation helps with like learning in general. And yeah, if you guys have a question or if you're confused, always just put in the chat. So this is just the structure that I kind of went over. So if, the if keyword, the condition. So this could be anything. Like it could have arithmetic and conditions and like all these comparison operators and all these things inside of these parentheses, as long as it evaluates to a true or false value. So as long as this, whatever's in here is true or false, you could just put it in. And there's going to be brackets. So these brackets are also really important, like syntax or like grammar encoding. And it just tells the computer like whatever's inside these brackets will run if this condition is true. So it's just kind of like for organization purposes. And usually we like to indent. So you could see like this comment is kind of indented with like a tab. And it's not actually necessary, but it's good for like humans just wanting to read the code. Okay, so I'm just gonna move on. Okay, so that was if statement. So now we're moving on to something called an else statement. So in comparison to the if statement, the else statement does not have that condition because the else statement kind of has like a condition behind it. It's kind of saying like if whatever is inside this, like the previous if statement conditional, like condition, if this is false, then this will run. So in this case, what, well, it kind of tells you what's going to print out. It's just going to ask. But since 3 greater than 4 is false, this cannot run because this will only run if the if statement is true, right? So since this is false, the else statement is going to run. So now what's going to be printed is math is easy instead of math is hard. So if you wrote conditional on your replit, you should definitely just add on to it with an else statement and maybe make the condition false and see what happens. I'll just give a minute. So 8:41. Okay, so hopefully you guys had time to write your conditional. This time I'm just gonna give you guys an example. So going back to that previous example in the beginning, right? So the is raining example. So what if I made a Boolean like variable called is raining? So this is just gonna tell me, is it raining? So I don't really know. So I'll just say false. I don't think it's raining. And this is going to be my Boolean variable, right? So I can have a conditional and it's going to ask if is raining equals true. So remember 2 equal signs, and it's going to be inside the parentheses. So this is the condition and it's going to be inside the parentheses. I'll show you guys a shortcut later. And then you're going to have brackets, right? So the brackets going to tell you if this condition is true, then we want to run what's inside the brackets. So if it's raining, right? So of course we want to bring an umbrella. So we should print bring an umbrella. And if it's not true, right? So if it's not raining, so we should not bring an umbrella. So okay, so breaking down this conditional more. So basically what it's saying, so I'm making a variable named is raining and I'm setting it to false. And I'm gonna say if is raining is true. So if it's raining, basically, then I'm gonna print out to bring an umbrella. And if it's not raining, so like if this is not true, which means that it's gonna be false, so it's not raining, then I'm gonna print out do not bring an umbrella. So what should be printed, because is raining is false, should be do not bring an umbrella, right? So hopefully that prints out. Cool. So do not bring an umbrella prints out because this is false. A shortcut that we could do is just put is raining in the condition. And the reason for this is because the condition can be any true or false value. So before, if like is raining is equal to true, we know that is raining is already a Boolean value. So we could just use this variable as our condition. So since this condition is false because is raining is false, then the same result will happen. It will just print do not bring an umbrella. So hopefully everyone is clear on that. Please let me know if you guys are not clear. Okay, so just a breakdown of the structure. So we see that the if statement kind of carried over because to use the else statement, you need an if statement because the else statement will only run if that condition is not true. So the else statement kind of like relies on the condition before it. So the structure is kind of the same, except that the else statement does not have that condition. And yeah, it has the brackets again. So if the condition turns out to be false and this red thing will not be run, then this orange code will be run. Okay, so let's do some practice to solidify what we just learned. So what will be the output of the following code? So you guys could think about it a little bit. And just let me know in the chat. Okay, so I want more answers, please. Okay, so since people answered in the chat, so a lot of people said B is greater than A. So I'm gonna tell you that it's actually incorrect. And to be if you are correct, there's gonna be a syntax error because again, those semicolons are very annoying, but very necessary in Java. So like you see on the second line here, right? There's no semicolon. So there is going to be a syntax error. And basically what syntax means for those of you who aren't like are still new to this. So syntax does so syntax is basically kind of like the grammar encoding. It's Yeah. And the else doesn't work as well, by the way. But I'll just go over this first error. So syntax is kind of like grammar in like code. So it's kind of like in English, like you need a period at the end of a sentence, you need a semicolon at the end of every statement. So that was the first error. Second error is also this else statement, right? So remember on the previous, let me just go back. So we see that this else statement does not actually have a condition, and only the if statement does. So that is why this is also a syntax error, because we don't need that condition there. And someone asked, don't you have to use else if to use else? You don't actually have to do that. You can use like any combination of them actually. So you could have an else if without an else, but we'll go through else if people aren't sure what that is. So yeah, I'll go through that more when we get there. Okay, so second question. If you guys like code on your Replit, you guys can paste in the chat and just like DM me, private message me in the chat if you want me to look over your code. But you should know, like, if it runs on Replit, then it should be right. So declare double variable. So remember, double is a decimal. And use conditionals to determine if the number is less than or greater than 10. So I'll give you guys until 8:51 because of time. I do want to get you guys out at 9, but we'll see. Okay, so hopefully you guys had a little bit of time to get somewhere with this code. But I will show you guys the solution just for time purposes. Okay, so we are declaring a double variable. So double nums is the variable name, and it's going to be equal to 12.2 semicolon. So now we want to write the conditional, to determine if the number is less than or greater than 10. So if num is less than 10, right? So this is going to be the conditional. If num is less than 10, brackets, then true. That is true. It is incorrect if num is equal to 10. But yeah, we will tolerate that. And so we'll print out less than 10 if the num is less than 10. And then we're going to have this else statement. So if it's not less than 10, then we're going to print out that that it's greater than 10. So since the number is 12.2, so if we go through this if statement, so we put in 12 num here. So num less than 10, which is false, right? So because 12.2 is not less than 10. So whatever's inside the brackets will not run, and it will go into the else statement. Because this condition was false, this else statement will run. So now it will print out greater than 10. So it's correct in this case since it's not 10, but since 12.2 is greater than 10, it will print out greater than 10. So that is one solution that you might have. Or you could have done like 2 if statements, that's okay too. Okay, so now we're going to go through one more statement, and it's called the else if statement. So an else if statement allows you to check an additional condition if the first statement is false. So here is the complete structure. So you can have like as many else if statements as you want, and then you can have like an else statement at the end. So basically, it's kind of like a package. You can think of it that way. So if you have this first condition, right, and if this one is true, then it will just run whatever's in the code and nothing else will run. If the condition turns out to be false and the second condition is true, then this will run. Then whatever is in pink is going to run. So an else if statement, the difference between an if statement and an else if statement is that an else if statement has kind of this like background or like secondary condition that says if the condition before it or if the conditions like in the package were all false before it. So for this else if statement, if this condition was false and my condition is true, then whatever is in pink is going to run. For this third else if, what this is saying is if condition like 1 and 2 are false and my condition 3 is true, then the purple code would run. And then the else statement is basically saying if nothing else above me ran, then I'm going to run my orange code. So it's kind of like a package. And in this type of package, only one piece of code, only one segment of code is going to be run, because they kind of all depend on the other like previous conditions. So for instance, like if condition 2 was true, but condition like 1 was true as well, only the first condition will be run and the second condition won't be, because the else if statement says the previous condition has to be false for me to run. So there's kind of that secondary like condition in the background. So any questions in the chat, please? Okay, so this is kind of just like adding on to the example we had before. So we had if 3 is greater than 3, then we want to print math is hard. Else if 3 is equal to 3, then we want to print math is fun. And for anything else, for any other condition, then we want to say math is easy. So let's go through this as if we were the computer. So if 3 is greater than 3, so we know that 3 is greater than 3 is false. So whatever's here will not be run. Else if 3 is equal to 3. So we know that 3 is equal to 3 is true. So we want to print math is fun. And this else statement just will be ignored because we know that this statement already ran. So this condition is already true. So this else statement will not be run. So what should be printed if you like wrote this on Replit is just math is fun. Okay, so adding on to else if statements, you can only have one else statement, but you can have as many else if statements as you want. So else if statements have their own condition that you could like have as many conditions as you want, right? But for else statements kind of catch like if everything else was false, just run me. So you can only have one else statement because 2 else statements wouldn't really make sense. And even if the condition is in the else if statement is true, the code in the brackets will only run, right, if the condition in the previous if statements is false. So this is kind of like what I've been talking about before. In this example, so this else if statement will only run if this previous statement is false. So if this previous statement was true, then this else if statement wouldn't be run, even though it's true. So just be aware of that. So that's kind of the difference between an if statement and else if statement. An if statement doesn't have that condition. Okay, so let's do some conceptual practice right before we go. So please type into the chat, what is a conditional? So what is a conditional? Anybody? Yes, whoever put that in the chat, that is very complicated definition of a conditional. But if you want to be more layman's words, I guess, for time purposes, I'm just gonna put it up. But basically, conditional is just a statement that performs an action based on a condition. So yes, like Jillian said, condition is the key word. So in a conditional, the condition is very important. It runs things based on that condition. Okay, so what is the difference between else if and else? So I didn't really go through this like difference. So if anyone knows, please put in the chat. So what is the difference between an else if statement and an if statement? Yeah, you guys are pretty much correct. So I'll just put up the answer that we have here and I can explain more. So an else if statement has a condition while an else statement does not. That is correct. And you guys also kind of basically said that usually the else statement is also like all the way at the end. It's usually the last statement. And another difference is that you can have as many else if statements as you want, but you can only have one else statement. So that's another difference. And true or false? The Boolean must, the condition must be a Boolean. So is this true or false? The condition must be Boolean. So just true or false in the chat. And yes, hello Noah. Okay, so I would just put up the answer for this, but yes, the condition must be a Boolean. Yes, the condition must result in the Boolean. So this is true. So the condition doesn't have to be something like we had before, kind of like I don't have it up now, but like it doesn't have to be like 10 is greater than 3 or like anything with like the greater sign or something like that. As long as it's a Boolean, it's a condition. It can be a condition. So in this case, right, this might be like an exception or something. Is raining is a Boolean variable. Because it's a Boolean, it can be used as a condition. So it doesn't have to be like, is raining equal to true? This will work too because it will give you a true or false value, it'll give you a Boolean, but more simply, you could just do is raining because it is a Boolean. So yeah, I think that is all we have for today. Wow, we have more practice, but it's a bit late, so I won't do these practice problems just because it's already 9:02. But please, when you get the slides, please just do these on your free time or something just to practice. These are really good practice questions. So yeah, thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, sorry. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, quick thing.
That was-
If you came late, the attendance form is in the chat right now. If you have questions, you can stay behind and ask them. It'll be slower and quieter, but it is 9 o'clock, so yeah, you might not want to do that. But if you have questions, you can just like type it in Discord. Any Discord is fine. Maybe you could type in the programming channel, but I think anywhere is okay too. You can just like tag Catherine or I. And then here are emails if you want, but nobody really uses those, so your pick. Oh, and also the recording and like the slides will probably be compiled into like a Google Drive folder. So we'll probably send that out and then you can just like refer to any of them. But yeah, as Catherine said before, the best way to like practice is just to like do it on Replit and just like test things out. I think that's the best way to learn it.
Yep. And we have like the programming channel in Discord, right? So just feel free to like ask questions, programming related there. Yeah, or email us if you want. Cool. So yeah, if you guys don't have any questions, you guys are free to go and have a good night.
Yes. Bye.
How did your